Hey, I'm Dan Pascone, CEO of Tailored Wealth and host of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, where every conversation is built around one idea that your money is a tool to design and live your version of a rich life. Most high earners can tell you their number, but very few can tell you what an actual Tuesday looks like on the other side of it. And that gap is exactly why work optionality stays a vague idea instead of a design. So today I'm joined by Tom Kinneary, who is the founder of a specialized natural gas advisory firm. And he left a comfortable corporate seat to build something that he could eventually step back from. We get into the visualization exercise he ran 5 years ago that produced the 7 pillars his weeks are still structured around, how he reverse engineers the delta between where he is and what work optional actually costs. And because everybody here is an energy consumer, how to lock in your rates and take one variable off the table. So before we get into it, make sure you're subscribed on your favorite platform. And if the show is adding value, I'd really appreciate a quick review. It goes a long way. Thanks so much and enjoy the episode.
Brought to you by Tailored Wealth, helping business leaders live their version of a rich life.
Welcome to another edition of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, where we cut through the financial noise and help business leaders to make smart, confident money decisions. All right, Tom, thanks for joining the Making Sense of Your Money podcast. Excited to chat with you today, man.
Likewise. Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it, Dan.
Yeah, you bet. So, you and I have gotten to know each other a little bit, and I'm excited to get into a few different things today. Number one, your profession is very interesting to me. And then number two, sort of your path and your journey and the way that you're building toward financial freedom is something that obviously I'm very passionate about. And I know our audience is as well. So we'll get into both of those. But why don't you just start by giving us a high level overview of who you are, your path to where you are today, and then ultimately what you do in your business?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So a little bit of a background about myself. I'm originally from New Jersey, around the Jersey Shore area. Hung out there in my 20s and late 20s. So live in Stamford, Connecticut right now, but made this transition to the energy industry back in 2010-ish, 2011-ish. And so my company right now, my background right now, it's pretty much centered entirely around the very fun, at least to me, it's fun, vertical in this energy industry, specifically on the natural gas commodity side.
Very, very cool. And I know you had done some corporate work in natural gas and energy previously. Tell us a little bit about what you did and then what ultimately caused you to pivot into running your own firm.
Yeah. So I started kind of sort of from the ground level up, sort of in the customer service type area of the business. And so it was a pivot for me to go from bartending at the Jersey Shore to working at an energy company. That was a big move for me, but just really became interested in how the energy industry works and how there's a lot of people that work to keep the lights on, to keep the heat on in the winter. So there's a lot of information to uncover there, and just really became interested in it and kind of worked my way up from different levels in the company to energy analyst and supply analyst, and then eventually scheduling and trading. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, made the decision to pivot out on my own, like you just mentioned, because I saw that there was an area in the industry and the sector that really could use a little bit more of a specialized service. And that was my product offering initially when I started my own business.
Tell us a little bit about that specialized service. What is it at a high level? And then how did you identify that there was an opportunity there?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a chance, a little bit of a risk to take, not exactly 100% a shoe-in, as sometimes that's the way business is. You have to take some risk. So yeah, going from having a comfortable job and a good salary to being out there just saying, okay, now you're going to work for yourself and you kind of got to go out there and get clients. Yeah, certainly a risk there, but I was willing to take it because, as you mentioned, and as I'm sure it is in most verticals, or at least in some verticals, there's lots of niche areas of the business. And the commodity that I work particularly in, which is natural gas, is one where there's a very small segment downstream of, call it production, which would be drilling, and midstream, which is transportation. That's the retail sector. And it's niche enough such that someone who had a good handle on the ability to manage the risk that it entails going to market, offering a retail price to a retail customer, having the ability to manage that risk effectively was where I saw the skill was. And so to be able to recognize that, hey, during certain events in the past, certain winter events, for example, there were a lot of companies that got hurt because they did not manage the risk appropriately. So I felt that was the missing piece, the knowledge to be able to manage tail risk, right? Tail risks, and to be able to survive these extreme weather type events. That was the skill and the missing piece that I saw that, hey, if I was able to bring some of that knowledge to some other firms, could I share that knowledge and use my expertise to then help them, help their business grow and help them survive these episodes? So that was the initial value pitch, if you will.
Got it. Got it. All right. We're going to talk a little bit more about your career and your track and how you're thinking about the future and financial independence and work optionality, all that stuff. But first, before I forget, our audience, I think everybody really is a consumer of energy, right? So, how, if we're helping people to make sense of their money here, how do you get the best prices? How do you source energy at the consumer level?
Yeah, yeah. At the consumer level, most people don't realize that I think it's about 15 states now across the United States, you actually have the option to choose who your energy supplier is. On the supply side, on the distribution side, it's pretty straightforward. Your local utility is the company that invested in the pipes and in the wires, so to speak. So they will have the regulated monopoly on the delivery of the energy, but the actual commodity itself, in many of these states, you're free to choose who supplies that energy to you. And so people don't realize that this opportunity offers you, especially on the commercial side, residential side too, but commercial side specifically, to be able to, for example, lock in your energy costs for a given forward time period, which allows you to budget. I know you're big into budgeting and planning. It allows you to budget for the future because at that point, you know that your energy rate won't fluctuate. So it's an important choice that I would advise your listeners to at least look into. Do a Google search and Google in your state and energy supply, and you'll probably get at least a forum or a board where you can choose among the various suppliers that are offering that competitive supply in your state.
Makes sense. And then with all that's gone on with oil in 2026, how do you suggest people think about locking in rates? With the idea that prices could be volatile in either direction.
Yeah, yeah. As you've seen, prices at the pump have certainly been volatile recently. And there's a little bit of a correlation between gas and oil, not as much as some may think. But in any event, when you have the winter period, which is when, for example, in my commodity, when the prices tend to rise, right? And for electricity prices, it would be in the summer. The reason of that is because in the winter, you're using natural gas to heat your home through your boiler. And in the summer, you're using electricity to power your air conditioner. So those are the peak time periods throughout the year when you're going to be cognizant of the fact that my rates may go up during these peak periods. That's just a supply and demand function. So to answer your question, you would want to look at perhaps what price did I pay last year during winter? What price am I paying this year in the summer? And so again, it especially comes down to the fact that if you want to budget, especially if let's say you're an industry, or let's say you own an office space and you are using energy to power your office space in the summer and in the winter. The CFO likes it when they can see what their budget's going to be, especially if the price is locked in. So the only thing that matters at that point is how much you consume, right? So you're eliminating one variable from the puzzle.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. All right. So let's get back to you now. How are you thinking about your business in the grand scheme of? I was fascinated when I got to know you a little bit with your plan to kind of create work optionality, which is obviously a big part of what we do here at Taylor Wealth and what we talk about on making sense of your money. So, how are you leveraging sort of what you're doing today and planning for this idea of work optionality? How are you thinking about that, Tom?
Yeah, work optionality is something that's big to me. The first time we got chatting, I referenced my whiteboard on the wall here. And, I took a lot of introspective time to understand what it is that I want out of my career and out of my life. And the number one thing, or at least one of the top number one things, or top three things, I should say, is going to be the optionality to just have the flexibility to be able to choose what I want to do each day. And so I know there's conversations probably in past episodes you've had around passive income and things like that. But the idea is that you want to be earning money when you're not necessarily contributing or operating directly to the work or to the business. So to me, the work optionality is important for me because, yeah, I do want to wake up every day and just say to myself, okay, today is whatever day. I'm going to write my schedule in exactly how I want it to be. If I want to work, then it's my option to do so. But if I want to take off and spend it with friends or family or do other projects, I want to have the ability to do so. And to me, after much thought, how to accomplish that, business building was the one main area that I wanted to focus on to say, okay, let's build a business, let's grow it, scale it, and then at some point have an exit plan to be able to then say, okay, I can now afford to take advantage of that optionality.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love your thoughts on that. Now, with respect to your current business, are you able to kind of create work optionality within the business, or is the business solely reliant upon your work? Like, in order for you to earn, do you have to work, or are there ways that you can set up the business to either hire people or put systems and policies in place that it's not solely reliant on your time?
Currently, right, the business is dependent on me operating it on a daily basis. But same nature of any business, at some point when you scale and you hire managers and those managers hire, direct reports and whatnot, I can find a way to be able to not necessarily have to operate the business as much. And then eventually at some point when I have enough managers that I trust, again, traditional in business, you hand off the reins to them completely and they're managing everything day to day. And I might only have to step in, once every other week or so to kind of manage most important affairs. And then eventually when I exit, at that point is okay, if I have an exit plan, do I want to then become a passive investor in a business similar to mine or different than mine either way? And at that point, becoming a passive investor, someone or a silent partner, essentially, is the point where I have the full freedom to be able to choose the full optionality of that work.
Got it. Got it. Very, very cool. Very cool. I always ask everyone this, and I think you started to allude to this, but what does your version of a rich life look like today? And how do you see that potentially evolving into the future as you've, spent a few years building this business?
Today, a rich life to me certainly looks like one where I feel good, both mentally, physically. Doesn't matter what business you have. And I'm sure many of your listeners have heard stories where, you work your way up the corporate ladder and it's so tolling on you and you were putting so many hours that it affects your physical and mental health. So today, a rich life to me is certainly one where I have the ability to think clearly, feel good about myself, make it to the gym, exercise, especially, a couple times a week. And then to at least have some, let's call it seasonality to my business, which fortunately it does. My peak season is in the winter and the off season is in the spring and summer. They call it the shoulder months in the industry. So during
Mhm.
that downtime, I certainly have the more of that optionality that I'm looking for and to be able to create that rich life, which is spending time with friends, family, working on projects, but I normally wouldn't have time to if I was working throughout the year as I grind in the winter. So that's what a rich life looks like to me today. And then in the future, I would say that the rich life is somewhat similar, just more, as I said, alluded to earlier, just scaled down to the fact where, okay, maybe now it's the full optionality of how much input and how much time I want to spend operating into the core business itself. Really that full open landscape of being able to just have that full autonomous freedom as to what I'm doing each day.
Yeah, it's interesting because I talked to a lot of folks. I spoke with a woman yesterday, and she had just left her corporate job and was kind of considering what was next. Was she going to do consulting or part time work? Was she going to go back to full time work, or was she going to hang it up altogether? And she early on realized that she couldn't not work. She needed to be doing something, but she probably didn't want to go back to the corporate grind that she was a part of before because she wanted to do a lot of the things that you just mentioned. So I'm curious. I know that you're, still very active in your business, and especially in your peak season, you're very, very engaged from a time perspective. But in the off peak time, how do you think about your time? How do you think about how you spend your time? How do you like sort of structure your days so that you're available when you need to be available, and you're doing the other stuff the time that you want to be doing that?
Yeah, no, I understand the delineation between, do you not want to work and could you not want to work? Or are you actually able to sit there and do nothing all day long? Some people can, some people can't. And that's each individual can decide that on their own. So, but to get back to your question, I structure my schedule, my day, my week, my month very particularly. I kind of tend to, and this all goes back to a lot of introspection that I think comes from having a clear picture in your head of what it means to live a rich life or a fruitful life. And an exercise that I did probably about 5 to 6 years ago was just to visualize in my head very clearly what it would look like each day if I was to wake up and have this rich, fruitful life, which I'm desiring. And was very clear about specific things. It wasn't just, oh, I want to do this, or decide this, and this. It was, when I open my eyes in the middle, in my room, middle of my room in the morning, what do I see? When I walk out of the room, what do I see? What are the first things that I do in the morning? How does my day progress into the early afternoon, into the late afternoon, evening, all the way through? And I played this day out in my head very clearly. And from there, I was able to understand what are the things that are missing. I don't like to use the word missing because it almost seems like have a something that I crave or am missing and need. But what are the things that I desire? And from there, I made a very careful list, and I made that list around 7 pillars, let's call it. And so, to answer your question, get back to the original question. The day is essentially, and the week and the month is essentially structured around each of those 7 pillars that I have. So if one of the two of the pillars revolve around work and it's some downtime in the summer, I can pivot towards the other 4 to 5 pillars and really block those in as to this is what I want to spend my time on in any given particular segment of the day or the week.
All right, so I love this. We got to dig a little bit deeper into this because I think the exercise you went through is so valuable in our audience, and I'm possibly going to use this for some of our clients. Um, what prompted you to go through this exercise? How did you go about the exercise to the degree you're willing to share? How long did it take you, and what kind of came out of it? Just walk us through like the thought process behind going through this like ideal day, if you will.
Yeah, I'm certainly big on visualization. I'd say there's definitely a lot of books and webinars that I've attended and lectures and everything, all saying where they basically, people will say the stronger you visualize something, the more
Mhm.
likely it is to happen. I mean, the one story that comes to mind just off the top of my head right now is I believe it was Jim Carrey, who before he was an actor wrote himself a check for some 7-figure amount and said, this is the amount of money that I want to make. And he put that on his wall and whatnot. So he was able to visualize very clearly what he wanted. And so just throughout these books that I read and whatnot, I just learned that the power of visualization and the power of repeating thoughts in your head, it's almost like, it trains your mind to think positively and it trains your mind to visualize the outcome. And the more you can visualize it, the more you can kind of feel it. So that's sort of what prompted me to go about doing it. And then, sure, to kind of work my way through it, it felt a little strange, at first to kind of visualize things, but through several iterations, you're able to define more clear of a picture of what it is that I wanted. And I've kept written logs of everything. So to make sure that if I make changes, I timestamp them so I can kind of see how my visualization has changed throughout time. And it doesn't change very much. I would say over the last 4 to 5 years, it's more or less stayed the same. Maybe I word it slightly differently, but it's more or less stayed the same. But again, it keeps me in a positive mindset, keeps me clear on the outcome and the goal. And then from those goals, I can certainly drill down towards the ground level and develop plans to achieve those goals.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question for you. When you've done this visualization exercise, which I love, what like tangible actions have come from it? Has there been anything that you've changed in your day to day? Has it affected how you spend your time? Has it affected how you maybe interact with people? Tell us a little bit about any action steps that have come from this exercise.
Well, one that comes to mind immediately is the fact that if you want it to be, it can be very iterative, because if you're making plans to achieve something and you don't achieve those goals or those plans, the iterative process comes out, because if you're curious enough, you want to figure out, well, what exactly did not work out that I intended. And so through further introspection, you can iterate through your plan and refine your plan. But one of the particular things that just came to mind is the fact that a lot of daily activity comes down to having good habits, both mental habits in the way you think and both physical habits in the things that you do. So it forced me to realize, well, wait a minute, if I can't get this thing started or it keeps failing for a specific reason, let's revisit the habits. Again, both the actions that I take each day and the thoughts that are in my head. How can I curate better habits to be able to develop these habit loops, which allows you to gain momentum and further take steps forward, as opposed to either being in the same spot or taking a step backwards. So habit forming was one of the main things I would say that this prompted me to develop good habits.
Very, very cool. Very cool. All right. Now, what role does money and finance play in sort of your overall plan? So you've done this level of visualization. You have sort of your roadmap for, work optionality and eventually financial freedom. Tell us a little bit about the role that you feel money plays in your grand plan and how it impacts, how you visualize things.
It plays an important role because I'm always moving, or I shouldn't say moving, but I'm always clearly defining the end zone. Let's call it the end zone. Meaning, if I know that I want to, let's say, retire or have at least the ability to take advantage of some work optionality, what age does that happen? How much funding do I have to be able to afford to say, let's say, work part time or no time, whatever you want to call it? And what is my life expectancy? So you can kind of back engineer or back into it mathematically exactly what that financing looks like, what that funding looks like. And then you can calculate what the delta is between what you have today and what you need to have between then and there. And from there, once you know the delta, you can sort of understand, okay, so what types of investments do I need to be able to grow to get to that level? What type of income do I need to be able to invest that amount each year, each quarter, whatever you want to call it? So when you break it down into a plan like that, you can just back engineer to pretty granularly how much I need to be earning now, how much I need to be investing now, and what sorts of types of investments do I need to be able to invest into to be able to get to that point where I have the funding, which will then enable me to choose the work optionality or the no work at all.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. I love it. I love it, Tom. Great, great stuff. Great foundation. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit and get to know you a little bit more and how you think about things. Although I think we've already
All right. I
scratched
love
that
it.
surface a little bit. So we're going to head into the lightning round. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. So the only thing I always ask here is just give us the first thought that comes to your mind. Could be one word, could be a long drawn out thought. All right. We'll start with this one. One meal for the rest of your life. What is it?
My mom's meatballs, 100%. She's been making them her whole life. They're Italian style. The recipe came from her grandmother, 100% without any hesitation. But it has to be with a boatload of the Pecorino Romano grated cheese on top of it. Those two
All right, I
combined.
love it. We could enjoy that together. I go back to my grandma's meatball and sauce recipes, and still enjoy those to this day. Very good.
It's all about the sauce. You said it.
That's it. That's it. All right. What's one tool or piece of technology other than your phone or your computer that you can't live without?
Said the printing press.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'd say
See,
the printing press. I just think that the compounding gains that you get from reading a book are just something that I don't know if I could live without books. So if I didn't have if the printing press wasn't invented, yeah, there'd be no books and you wouldn't be able to mass produce knowledge and information. So can't live without that.
All right. So that's a perfect segue into my next one. What's one book that has influenced how you think and how you live?
I mean, there's so many, but I'll pick the one that first comes to mind as you told me to do. It's Principles by Ray Dalio. So very clear instruction on how to develop your decision criteria. So anytime you make a decision, whether it's in your life or your personal work, or your business, I should say, you carefully define what your criteria is for making that decision. And from that, you can distill principles which will enable you in the future to not only get better at making the decision, but you don't have to spend time and actually thinking about whether you should or shouldn't do something. Since you've already defined the principle, you can simply just refer back to the principle and refine it over time. And then from there, just make really good decisions.
Cuts down that decision loop because you've already essentially laid the framework. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a great one. Um, what's one habit that you would say has had a big impact on your success?
Definitely the gym, definitely exercise, I should say. It's something that my dad taught me when I was 13. We got in the basement, started lifting weights at an early age. And, the thing is, you wanted to be big, you want to be strong and you know, have muscle. So it's like, to me, that's a habit where it teaches you just discipline. Of course, there's the ability that you have to show up every day. You have to just, no matter what's going on, you're tired, you're at work, you always have to make time. So the discipline, the determination combined, it elevates my performance elsewhere because if you can show up when you don't want to, it challenges you to show up in other places where you might not want to.
Yeah, I agree. That's a big one for me as well. I think that personal fitness and health has a real downstream effect on your entire life, and how you show up and how you execute. So I agree with that one. All right, let's talk about your
100%.
bucket list. Um, can you tell us something that maybe you've already checked off the bucket list, and then something that's still on the bucket list that you want to do?
Let's see, the bucket list. So, yeah, I think haven't checked off would certainly be scaling the business. Doesn't necessarily have to be my business, but scaling a business that combines people, combines strategy, combines clear decision making, combines technology to create products that can really benefit the world, advanced, civilization, let's call it. Probably sounds like a, pretty cliche goal, but it's important to me to be able to do something where after I'm long gone and I've handed my estate over to my successors, to at least have a legacy to people can look back and say he did something really good and people benefited from it. So that would be something that is on the bucket list that I haven't checked off yet, but actively pursuing that every day. And then one that I have checked off. Let's think about that. I mean, there's things that come to mind like traveling places, but I don't know. I feel those are all a little bit too cliche. Have checked off. Let's see. I mean, I'll throw a fun traveling one in there then. So I'm adopted from the country of Colombia,
Okay.
and it was always a goal or a desire of mine to visit the country. Right, not having known anything about it growing up here in the United States, and so as a kid, I could always remember myself saying, "Oh, yeah, I can't wait until I'm older to go back to my country and see what it looks like." And
So
I think it was around 21 or 22 when I finally got that opportunity to go back and see where I came from and experience the culture and the cuisine, which is just phenomenal. If you've never had good Colombian authentic food, I would highly recommend it. But I'd put that on the bucket list. It was important to me because that's where I came from, and it was important to see where I had come from. So maybe not cliche in the traveling sense, but more reflective of the fact that I wanted to see my whole country.
very cool. That's awesome. All right, last one. One piece of advice you would give to your younger self. What would it be?
I would certainly say that, and I would advise any parent to adopt what I'm about to say with their family. Growing up, it's important that you realize that as an independent person, the decisions you make are not always going to appeal and appease to other people around you. And so people can be criticizing, and they could maybe not accept you for the decisions you make. So what I would give the advice to my younger self would be, irrespective of what other people think or say about you, just have good self-love for yourself. And this might be more of like my empathetic and Buddhist compassionate self coming out now, but have good self-love for yourself, and understand that it's okay to make decisions that other people don't accept. Just do what you think is best and in good faith, and go from there, right? But definitely have the self-love to know that you are lovable, you are valuable, and the world will love you no matter what this one person or group of people may say. Hopefully that wasn't too deep for you, but
No, I love it.
that's
I
part,
love it. It's
it's
really good advice. A
part of
lot
me.
of people
So
could benefit from that. You're right. A lot of people could benefit from that, and
yeah,
probably clear up their get rid of their head trash, as I call it. For good stuff. Good
right
stuff.
on.
All right, and then Tom, finally, if our listeners want to connect with you, collaborate with you, just learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'd say, LinkedIn, I'm pretty active. We're very
Good.
active, I should say. So you can look up Thomas W. Kinneary on LinkedIn. We could probably put the spelling of that somewhere
We'll put
in
it
the
in the show
pod
notes.
notes or
Yep, we'll
whatever.
put it in the show notes for
That
sure.
would be a good way. Just DM me, add me, or if you want, you can email me too. My email is available on LinkedIn. So either one of those channels is great.
All right, awesome, very cool, Tom. Thanks for coming on today. I really enjoyed the discussion.
I really enjoyed this, Dan. Thank you for inviting me, and much appreciated.
You bet. That's it for the episode. You can find our podcast along with our newsletter and YouTube channel, all for free at makingsenseofyourmoney.com. And as always, be sure to prioritize your version of a rich life. Cheers.